Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on a Monday morning, fairly early in the day. I'd like to call this meeting to order. The Durham District School Board acknowledges that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships, both historic and modern, with the territories upon which our school board and our schools are located. Today, this area is home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. We acknowledge that the Durham region forms a part of the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, the Mississauga peoples, and the treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation. It is on these ancestral and treaty lands that we teach, we learn, and we live. You have an agenda in front of you. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none, I'd like a motion to adopt this agenda. Motion by Trustee Edwards, seconded by Trustee Bird. All those in favor? Thank you. We have no information items, so we will move directly to our one recommended action. On June 27th, the board found that Trustee Crawford breached the Code of Conduct. As required under the Education Act, the board provided Trustee Crawford with written notice of the findings of breach and the sanction of censure, and provided Trustee Crawford until July the 15th to make written submissions to the board. Written submissions were received on July the 14th. Those submissions are found in the agenda package on pages 2 and 3. The Education Act requires that the board consider the written submissions made on July the 14th and either confirm or revoke the determinations as to breach that were made on June the 27th. This meeting is not a hearing. This meeting is not a reopening of the debate that occurred on June 27th. I'm going to repeat that. This meeting is not a hearing, nor is it a reopening of the debate that happened on June 27th. Under the Education Act, we are mandated to consider the written submissions and based on those submissions to confirm or to revoke the determination of breach. The Education Act further provides that if the board revokes a finding of breach, then any sanction imposed by the board is automatically revoked. On the other hand, if the board confirms a finding of breach, the board must reconsider the sanction and must confirm, vary, or revoke the sanction. There were 3 findings of breach, and we're going to deal with each one of those findings separately. But before doing so, I note that Trustee Crawford has emailed each of us asking for additional submissions to be made part of the record for the meeting today. But I'm going to call upon Council Cotter and ask him if he's able to provide any guidance on that request. Council Cotter.
Thank you, Chair Morton, and through you. So this meeting, as you've said in your opening remarks, is a fairly narrow meeting that's prescribed under the Education Act. The purpose of the meeting is to consider the written submissions that were submitted by Trustee Crawford prior to the July 15th deadline. In my opinion, there's no basis to allow supplemental oral or written submissions to be submitted after the deadline or to be considered by the board. I think the only potential option the board may have, if it did want to allow these submissions to form part of the record, would be to amend the deadline for submissions to Friday. That's something that I think could arguably at least bring it within compliance with the Education Act. But even that's a bit of a stretch because, you know, Trustee Crawford received the letter. The deadline was July 15th, and we did, you know, the board did get submissions by that deadline. So as I say, I don't really believe there's a basis for any additional oral or written submissions to be submitted. The only potential option for the board would be to, extend the deadline to today.
Thank you, Council Cotter. I'm wondering how the trustees feel about extending that deadline to Friday, the 22nd of July. Your thinking? Trustee Forbes, your hand is up.
Oh, I'm unclear. I mean, this process has been going on since February. There's been a very thorough process, and we've, there was quite a firm deadline. I wouldn't see why it would be necessary to do that. This has gone on for quite some time, and I just, that's my feeling on it.
Thank you. Are you going to make a motion that we then would not amend that deadline?
Through you, Chair Morton, I don't think anything's required.
Okay.
You've as chair, you've flagged the issue for the board. If there's no motion, I think the meeting just proceeds.
Thank you. Trustee Lundquist, your hand did go up and it did go down. Did you want to add something?
No, that's what I was going to say. I didn't think a motion to not do it was necessary. We can.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Then we will move on. I'm going to look at the first finding. As a result of the comments that Trustee Crawford made at the October 25th, 2021 Governance Committee meeting, the text of which is set out on page 17 of the IC report, Trustee Crawford breached the Code of Conduct, in particular, section 1.4 and 6.9. I would ask for a motion to either confirm or revoke that finding. And Trustee Forbes, I see your hand is up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I would make a motion that the board confirm the finding that as a result of the comments Trustee Crawford made at the October 25th at the October 25th, 2021 Governance Committee meeting, the text of which is set out on page 17 of the IC report, Trustee Crawford breached the Code of Conduct, in particular, section 1.4 and 6.9.
We have a motion on the table put forward by Trustee Forbes. Do I have somebody second that motion? Trustee Lundquist, thank you. We would now open that up for discussion. Any comments, please? Are there comments or questions? Seeing none, we have a motion on the floor put forward by Darlene Forbes, seconded by Nikki Lundquist. I will now call that vote. I ask you to go to the reactions at the bottom of your screen. A green check would indicate that you are in favor of that motion. A red X would indicate that you are not. Please vote now. That motion has passed. Thank you. Moving on to the second finding. As a result of the comments that Trustee Crawford made at the January 24th, 2022 Governance Committee meeting, the text of which is set out on page 18 of the IC report, Trustee Crawford breached the Code of Conduct, in particular, section 1.4 and 6.9. I would ask for a motion to either confirm that finding or to revoke that finding. Could I have a motion, please? I see Trustee Forbes, your hand is up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I move that the board confirm the finding that as a result of the comments that Trustee Crawford made at the January 24th, 2022 Governance Committee meeting, the text of which is set out on page 18 of the IC report. Trustee Crawford breached the code of conduct, in particular sections 1.4 and 6.9.
Thank you, Trustee Forbes. Could I have somebody second that motion? Thank you, Trustee Lundquist. Are there questions? Are there comments? Seeing no comments, then I will call that vote. Again, I ask you to go to the reactions. The green check mark indicates in favor of the motion. The red X indicates that you are not. That motion has again passed. Thank you. Now we will move on to our third finding. As a result of threats of reprisal against the trustees who filed complaints against him, Trustee Crawford breached the code of conduct, in particular section 6.53. I would ask for a motion to either confirm that finding or to revoke that finding. A motion? Trustee Lundquist.
Thank you. I would move that the board confirm the finding that as a result of threats of reprisal against the trustees that filed complaints against him, Trustee Crawford breached the code of conduct, and in particular, section 6.53.
Thank you, Trustee Lundquist. I need to have somebody who would second that motion. Thank you, Trustee Brainy. Questions or comments? I see no questions, so I am going to call the vote. Again, the red X or the green check mark would indicate how you feel about that motion. Thank you. That motion has passed. Welcome, Trustee Lowry. We are glad to see you, and hopefully your video and your audio are both working. We will carry on. So the findings of breach have been confirmed. We must now reconsider the sanction of censure that the board proposed. I would ask for a motion to either confirm, to vary, or to revoke that sanction of censure. Could I have a motion, please? We need to confirm, vary, or revoke the sanction. Trustee Lundquist.
Thank you, Chair Morton. I would move that the board confirm the action of censure.
Thank you. A seconder for that motion? Trustee Forbes. Comments? Questions? Trustee Lowry.
I feel that the sanction should be revised.
In what way?
I think, given what's happened from my perspective, and I think this has been a very difficult situation for everybody, but also for Trustee Crawford. I think a warning at this point would suffice to bring about the change needed.
Thank you. Further comments? So we have a motion on the floor to confirm, and we've had a question regarding a variation. Trustee Lundquist.
So I don't think I didn't hear a motion brought in respect of that, or a motion to amend it, but I do want to speak to this because I would like to make two observations just very briefly. The first is that censure was the recommended, and I recognize it's our decision, but it was the recommended path of the IC, and that holds some weight with me. But also, censure is really just an acknowledgement that we don't support the language and the use of the kind of language that was used. So the idea that we would recant from that, to me, is moving away from the idea that is damaging. And I don't accept that, particularly as somebody who was subject, in my view, to a threat of reprisal. So I feel very strongly that this is a very minor response, frankly, in light of some of the behavior, and I absolutely don't support revising it to a lesser penalty.
Further comments? Are there further comments? We'll go to Trustee Forbes and then to Trustee Barrett. Darlene?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And further to that, I don't believe a warning is really within our options that we were provided. So essentially, it's do nothing or censure or prevent from attending committee meetings. And forgive me if Councillor Cotter would like to add the third option we have under the Education Act. I think the censure is appropriate. I see no indication that we've acted inappropriately, and I think it's a necessary step. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Forbes. Moving on to Trustee Barrett.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And I was just going to add that to me, the difference between a warning and a censure is whether one is official and whether one is unofficial. To be able to suggest that the concept of a warning is do nothing, I would probably argue that it has not been the case, because I would suggest that this conversation that has been going on in public has already, I think, served its purpose in being able to determine what's perceived as acceptable or unacceptable behaviors by a trustee. I neither voted for nor against the continuation of the sanctions as I did in the public meeting. I abstained in both. There was no option giving for abstention in this. My belief in this is that I have significant questions with regards to the censoring that we are doing over the first two breaches. However, the third, and that's why I would support the censor, to me is an absolute breach of the code of conduct and therefore merits that. But the difference between a warning and a censor is whether or not it's official or unofficial, but I believe it serves the same purpose. And there's still an opportunity here, as indicated in our last meeting and indicated in some of the other emails that have taken place, that further education and training is still not mandated, but however, it could still be an option in order to be able to drive this forward and to change behaviors as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Barrett, for those comments. Are there further comments or questions? Seeing none, we have a motion on the table. It has been seconded. I will therefore call the vote. Again, I will remind you, the green check mark indicates that you are in favor. The red check mark indicates that you are not. Calling the vote now. Thank you. That motion has passed. Excuse me for a moment. Thank you. We only had the one recommended action. That's all the business that we need to attend to at the present time. So I will say that this meeting is adjourned. Thank you for joining us.